I didn't cry the morning he left. What I remember instead is how clean everything looked. The kitchen counter wiped down, the coffee mug rinsed and turned upside down like it belonged in a showroom. The divorce papers were centered on the table, not tossed, not hidden, aligned. It felt less like abandonment and more like a decision made in a language I hadn't been taught. I read the first page standing up. By the second, I sat down. By the third, I stopped trying to understand the tone and focused on the structure. Dates, signatures, instructions. There was no explanation. Not even a sentence pretending to soften it. For weeks, I told people he had left. That was the simplest version. It didn't invite questions I couldn't answer. At night, though, I replayed ordinary moments. Conversations about groceries. The way he paused once before answering a call. A shift in how often he said my name. None of it added up to this. Nothing justified the neatness of his exit. Anger came late. It wasn't loud, it was methodical. I organized it the way he had organized his leaving, quietly, with control. 6 months passed like that. Not healing, just adjustment. I stopped expecting the door to open. Stopped checking my phone for explanations that would never come. I found him by accident, a detour. Traffic rerouted me through a part of the city I had no reason to be in. Dust, scaffolding, unfinished structures rising out of the ground like interrupted thoughts. I wouldn't have noticed him if he hadn't turned his head at the exact moment my car slowed. There was no mistaking him. Even under the hard hat, even with the sun burning his skin darker than I had ever seen it. His posture gave him away. That slight forward lean like he was always about to step into something. I parked without thinking. For a long time, I just watched. He moved differently. Not rushed, but deliberate. Carrying weight like it belonged to him now. When he finally saw me standing there, he didn't look surprised. That unsettled me more than anything. We didn't hug. We didn't reach for each other. There was a small space between us that felt permanent. You found me, he said. Not how, not why. Just that. I wasn't looking, I answered. He nodded like that made sense. For a while, neither of us filled the silence. The noise of construction carried around us. Metal, voices, engines, but it didn't touch whatever this was. You could have told me, I said eventually. His jaw tightened, not defensively, but like he was holding something in place. I couldn't, he said. It wasn't an excuse. It was a boundary. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because it felt absurdly consistent. Even now, he was choosing precision over comfort. Then explain it now. He looked past me for a second, as if checking whether there was still time to leave this unfinished too. Then slowly, your name was on it. On what? He exhaled not heavily, just enough to mark the shift. The investigation. The word didn't land immediately. It hovered, disconnected from anything I understood about our life. What investigation? He met my eyes then, and for the first time I saw something close to strain. The company, where I worked. There were irregularities, funds, contracts. It wasn't small. He paused. They started tracing connections, accounts, family. I felt something cold move through me. Not fear exactly, but recognition that I had been standing near something I never saw. And me? I asked. You were linked through shared assets, joint filings. It was enough. That doesn't explain why you left. It does, he said quietly. If I stayed, you stayed in it too. I searched his face for something, guilt maybe, or certainty. But what I found was steadiness, not the kind that reassures, the kind that accepts consequences already chosen. You could have told me, I said again, softer this time. And then what? He asked. You would have waited. You would have been questioned, watched, pulled into something you didn't create. And you disappearing fixed that. It separated you from me, he said. Legally, financially, completely. The word completely settled between us. I wanted to argue, to point out the arrogance in deciding that for both of us. But part of me understood the logic, not emotionally, never that, but structurally. The same way I had understood the divorce papers. Is it over? I asked. He hesitated. That depends on what they decide. Before I could respond, a voice called his name. Not casually, firm, official. A man in a dark shirt approached, holding a folder. There was something unmistakable about him. Not authority in the loud sense, but in the way others adjusted when he walked through. Mr. Rahman, he said, glancing briefly at me before returning his focus to my husband. We need a moment. My husband nodded. To me, he said nothing. Not goodbye, not wait. The man opened the folder, and I caught a glimpse of documents. Stamped, formal, undeniable. You've been cleared of direct involvement, the man said, his voice even. But the financial restructuring stands. All prior assets remain frozen pending final review. Cleared, the word should have meant relief. Instead, it rearranged everything I thought I understood. My husband didn't react visibly, just a small nod like this was expected. And her? I asked before I could stop myself. The man looked at me fully this time. You are no longer under review, he said. That was resolved when the separation was finalized. Separation, not abandonment, not disappearance, a process. A line drawn clean enough for systems to recognize. Thank you, my husband said. The man left as quietly as he had arrived. We stood there again, but the space between us had changed. Not smaller, just clearer. You knew this would happen, I said. I hoped, he corrected. And if it hadn't, he didn't answer. That was the part that stayed with me. Not what he did, but what he was willing to risk without telling me. I didn't ask you to protect me, I said. I know, there was no apology attached to it. I looked at him, really looked this time, at what he had given up and what he had taken from me in the process. Understanding settled in slowly. It didn't soften anything. It just removed the illusion that this had been simple. I can't go back to before, I said. I'm not asking you to. For the first time, that felt true. We didn't decide anything after that. No promises, no conclusions. Just two people standing on opposite sides of something that had already happened. When I walked away, I didn't look back, not because I was done, but because now I finally knew what I was carrying.